Selamat pagi Bapak dan Ibu. Good morning ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for coming to the breakfast event this morning, jointly organized by the IABC, AIBC, and Catalyst. We've got colleagues from the AIBC joining online from Australia. A very warm welcome to you all to this event. My name is Farah Ojianto. I'm the Project Officer for Market Access in Catalyst, and I will be your MC today. Allow me to extend a warm welcome to Ibu Ratih Rulianti on behalf of Pak Anwar Sanusi, the Secretary General from Ministry of Manpower, Ibu Prasida Aharsa, Ibu Budi Wikaning Tias, and Bapak Gede Wirapradia. If anyone needs a translation assistant, we are providing the services on this event. You can kindly go to the registration desk for the interpreting devices. Also, a warm welcome to Bapak Simon Anderson, Counselor for Economic Trade and Investment from Australian Embassy in Indonesia, Ibu Jennifer Matthews, National President from AIBC, joining us via Zoom today, and of course, our co-host, Bapak George Marantika, the National President of IABC. Colleagues from the Indonesian Ministry of Manpower are here to respond to any question you may pose about the pilot. Likewise, joining from Canberra via Zoom, colleagues from the FTA branch from DFAT. We understand this isn't the first time you've heard about the pilot. Both the IABC and the AIBC have held socializations events in the past. So we thought to make it different. This time we intend to go deeper. We've also made available in person and online a guidebook on how to utilize the SDE. This is a resource that we produce with the guidance of both government. Without further ado, Pak Paul Butler, Director of Catalyst, will start off our event this morning.
Yang terhormat Ibu Rati, Ibu Prasidia, Ibu Budi, and Pak Gede from Kementerian Ketenagakerjaan, Bapak Simon Anderson, Councillor for Economic Trade and Investment, the Australian Embassy in Indonesia, Pak George Marantika, National President, IABC, and joining us online, Jennifer Matthews, National President, AIBC. Selamat pagi. Izinkan saya lanjut dalam bahasa Inggris. Hope you've all managed to grab a bite to eat and some coffee. And welcome to the IANA Hotel for our event this morning in collaboration with AIBC and IABC. And welcome to those online who are joining us at lunchtime in Australia. Welcome everybody. So many of you will be familiar with the Skills Development Exchange. We ran an event about 2 months ago with APindo, the Employers Association in Indonesia. But we feel that we need to drill down a bit more, and that's the purpose of us meeting again today and exploring the technicalities of this Skills Development Exchange. And to that end, Catalyst, with support from DFAT and the government of Indonesia, we've managed to pull together a technical guide on how best to utilize this new innovative program, the Skills Development Exchange. We feel that the kinds of questions and issues that will be raised in the guidebook will be useful for you to dive into, be it at the individual, workplace, or sectoral level. I should also tell you there's a little bit of a caveat. There are ongoing discussions between the two governments on the exit permits, but that notwithstanding, the guidebook is available. It can be downloaded from our website, and I do believe there are hard copies outside, so if you didn't manage to pick one up on your way in, please feel free to pick one up as you exit. So much of the name suggests, Catalyst is catalyzing the bilateral economic ties between the two countries. And we recognize that mobility in each direction is central and a critical condition upon which mutually beneficial commercial partnerships between Indonesia and Australia can be developed. So it's our goal today, through this event and the guidebook that you can download, that you walk away with a much better understanding of the pilot program, and more importantly, how businesses such as yours, many of which have been identified and have been invited today because you are on that sectoral priority list for the scheme, can better understand how to use it and how to avail of it and how to get that mobility and that people-to-people connectivity going between the two countries. On the DFAT side, Dan Simpson and his team from the FTA Sectoral Services section are joining online from Canberra today to share thoughts and procedures on applying for work placements in Australia. And likewise, Ibu Rati, Ibu Prasida, Ibu Budi, and Pak Gede from the Ministry of Manpower in Indonesia will provide the perspective from the Indonesian side. So with that, I wish you all a very pleasant morning and a productive discussion. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Pak Paul. And I'd like to call on Pak George to say a few words as a co-host of today's gathering.
Everyone, thank you, Pak Paul, for your remarks earlier, and for our members from IABC who are joining us, mohon maaf lahir batin, as we celebrate together again, gather together again after the Ramadan holidays. This is, I guess, our first gathering after the Ramadan holidays, so it's great to be with you all again. For our IBC members, and I see a lot of good friends here. Anton, Philip, nice to see you again. And so I would like to also recognize from the Australian Embassy, Simon. Yeah, thank you for being a strong supporter of IBC throughout the years, yeah. And also Bahan, yeah, I see Bahan behind everything. Thank you also, yeah. And so this is a program that is very crucial and important, actually, in terms of the IA-CEPA. Yeah? IA-CEPA. I noticed ibu-ibu dari Kementerian ya, Tenaga Kerja ya. Thank you for joining us today. But this program is related to probably one of the main thrusts and drivers of the concept behind the Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement, and that is the Skills Exchange Program. And in this program, it has been part during the time when we were discussing the IA-CEPA in terms of the consultations between the Indonesian government and the Australian government with the partnership. It's called the business partnership groups. At the time, from Indonesia, it was IABC, Indonesia-Australia Business Council, AIBC, the Australia-Indonesia Business Council, and hi, Jennifer. Jennifer will be joining us online, I believe coming either from Perth or from Melbourne. So hi, Jennifer. And also Kadin, or the Indonesian Chamber of Commerce Industry, and ACCI, the Australian Chamber of Commerce Industry, and AIG and APINDO. So this program is a program that all of these business partnership groups endorsed. And because we saw this as also a recommendation actually coming out of the government. So this actually was a recommendation coming out of the governments that we endorsed in the context that there would be opportunities, not just skills exchange, but there's the knowledge transfers on both sides. And that's why just coming up, I asked Paul, is education part of this? Of this exchange. Well, we'll see how this thing formulates, because I think it is ongoing. Because in the end of the day, these type of programs are programs that are embedded in knowledge, in skills. And I see here CPA, or I'm from education, doing training, right? I see our friends from CQU, Professor, yeah, Professor Bijon, and also from BINUS, yeah, our friends from BINUS here, yeah, and Nurture, yeah. So this is a question, I guess, in terms of the context of this program, how the skills exchange can dive deep. And that's probably a question, so I'm not just providing remarks, I'm actually asking a question also for the panelists to help answer. Because that is where actually our skills exchange is embedded. Because in terms of skills, now, in terms of training and skills, it's deeply embedded now. It's called, we call it down trading, right? So down trading from knowledge all the way to skills. And how in this process can we embed this into a consolidated effort? And I think that will provide an opportunity for the corporates or the companies here. And I see a lot of good friends from Castle Asia. Ian, thank you for joining us. How the corporates then can partake in, in integrated, some people call it triple helix, pentahelix, however that's called. But now it's all integrated. Yeah, it's how you integrate that. And so I think in terms of the skills, in terms of corporates, like my friend here from Tricor, Anton, good member of IABC, in terms of skills and corporates, how do we integrate? And then how we then interface it with Indonesia and Australia. And I think that will be the future of how to advance this skills exchange program. And with that, I always like to trigger thought. So my remarks is, thank you for all being here. Enjoy your breakfast. But through this morning event, let's trigger thought. This is a thought process. Let's trigger the thought. And what's exciting is Indonesia is coming into a new phase as we have a transition of government, right? And always, in terms of the changing of the guards, there's always new opportunity, new excitement. And so in the context of the Indonesian-Australia Skills Exchange program, how together can we create this excitement? So with Catalyst, thank you, Catalyst. Catalyst, as in this standing board, is memajukan, apa itu artinya itu? Memaksimalkan manfaat IA-CEPA bagi Indonesia dan Australia. How do we utilize, right? How do we advance and utilize? And in this context, I think the conclusion of this event should be two things. How to advance it. My recommendation is embed, because that is the future of how skills in corporations and training in institutions and education institutions, such as my friend over there in CQU, that is, and I know you have a training center too, right, in Jakarta, right? Now, how you integrate that, and then obviously how do you interface between Indonesia and Australia? And I have to add one thing for our Indonesian colleagues. Australia is very advanced. The economy is very advanced, and in terms of the skills, the knowledge and skills in the companies, in the corporates, are very advanced. So it is an advantage for us in the Indonesian companies and corporates, and including the education sector, to be able to capture that. So this is to trigger thought, and let's see in terms of the panel how we can discuss these issues in this matter. Thank you very much. I give the time back to the MC, and I want to thank the IABC Secretariat for their support with Catalyst in facilitating this program. Have a good breakfast, Have a good breakfast.
you, Pak George, for the opening remarks, and thank you, colleagues joining from Australia, for your patience. Now I'd like to turn to Ibu Jennifer Matthews, the National President of AIBC, to invite her to say a few words for us today.
Thank you very much, and selamat pagi to everybody there, and a big shout out to Pak George, President of IABC, to you too, Paul, from Catalyst, to our colleagues from the Indonesian Ministry of Manpower, from Simon, the Australian Embassy. Wonderful to see you all online today. I'm actually zooming in from Perth, Western Australia. So AIBC is really delighted to partner with the IABC and Catalyst in hosting today's event on the Indonesia-Australia Skills Development Exchange. As the peak membership body in Australia for the promotion of trade and investment between Australia and Indonesia, AIBC really welcomes the Skills Development Exchange as a key initiative under IA-CEPA, and one that will really have potential, I think, to strengthen business-to-business connections between our two countries. AIBC is also really pleased to see that the Skills Exchange has been expanded so that workers and businesses from both our countries will be able to undergo placements across a greater number of industry sectors. So now covering sectors like tourism, the green economy, mining, agribusiness, and financial services. And importantly, these are all industry sectors where AIBC sees a strong alignment between Indonesian and Australian priorities and capabilities, and this provides a really strong platform for future growth and partnerships. And picking up on George's key message as well, we are often reminding our members about how important IA-CEPA is as an agreement between Australia and Indonesia. It truly is a landmark agreement, and one that does provide Australian businesses with a competitive edge over other countries in trying to access opportunities in Indonesia. But really, for us to take full advantage of IA-CEPA, we need to work harder to build those personal networks and to build cross-cultural capability. And I think this is where the Skills Exchange will have an important role to play. I think in particular, we see the exchange having that potential to build connections between younger people who are seeking to build their skills at the early stages of their career. And this will help to build a pipeline of greater capability and understanding across a diverse range of industry sectors. And from our perspective, it is so important, and this is a message that we're continually giving to our members and to wider industry, about the transformation that is taking place across Indonesia. And it's still perhaps not truly appreciated. So this is a message that we're constantly providing to certainly our membership. I mean, we know Indonesia is on track to become one of the world's largest economies by 2040, with a rapidly growing consumer class. And one of the facts that resonates very strongly with our membership is there are currently 13 million Indonesian households with disposable incomes of over $15,000 compared to 9 million households in Australia. But by 2040, this is expected to grow to 63 million households in Indonesia, compared with 11 million in Australia. So it just gives you an idea of the scale of change that is taking place in Indonesia. And this is happening alongside the demographic dividend, with half of Indonesia's population under the age of 30. So we're seeing this driving a very strong entrepreneurial culture and, of course, a huge growth in the digital economy. So for AIBC, raising awareness, building capability will be an ongoing focus, ensuring that our members and the wider business community are kept informed about the opportunity that is on offer in Indonesia. We find particularly businesses are looking for support in making in-market connections with key stakeholders, with partners who can help to navigate some of the complexities of the operating environment and to help mitigate some of the risk for their commercial ventures. So in this context, we really welcome some of the initiatives that have been announced by the Australian government as part of its Southeast Asia economic strategy out to 2040. And this includes the creation of investment deal teams, the Southeast Asia Business Exchange, and the pilot exchange for young professionals. I mean, these are all very practical initiatives that will help support our community, strengthen those connections. And here we have the Skills Development Exchange, another really practical, valuable initiative, which we absolutely encourage companies and businesses to take advantage of. And today's event, I think, is a great opportunity to socialise the benefits of the exchange, including, I think, the technical guide that's been produced to support that. So we certainly look forward at AIBC to promoting the Skills Exchange to our membership, to the wider business community, both through our state chapters and through our industry groups. And just finally, if I may, I would like to give a bit of a plug for the AIBC National Conference, which is taking place in Sydney in November this year, from the 11th to the 13th of November. And the theme of our conference is Invested Australia Indonesia, the time is now, sekarang waktunya. So we very much look forward to seeing people at our conference in November, and just wish you all the very best for a successful event today. Thank you.
Thank you, Ibu Jennifer Matthews, for the warm welcome. And with us today, representing the Indonesia Ministry of Manpower, Ibu Ratih Rulianti on behalf of Bapak Anwar Sanusi. And I would like to call her to give her opening remarks for today.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. First of all, allow me to convey our regret that Mr. Secretary General of the Ministry of Manpower is now actually still in Singapore in the middle of his overseas journey. And then in this same month, I also, on behalf of Ministry of Manpower, I also would like to say happy Idul Fitri. And now, please allow me to read Mr. Secretary General's remark in Bahasa Indonesia. Yang saya hormati Mr. Simon Anderson, Counselor, Economic Trade and Investment, DFED Jakarta, Ms. Joan Lovejoy, Director of Mobility and Mutual Recognition Section, DFED Canberra, Bapak Bernardino M. Vega, Vice Chairman of International Relations, the Indonesian Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Kadin Indonesia, Bapak George Irwan Marantika, National President, the International Association of Business Communicators, IABC, Ibu Jennifer Matthews, National President AIBC, para tamu undangan lain yang berbahagia. Selamat pagi, puji syukur kita panjatkan kehadirat Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala yang telah melimpahkan rahmat dan hidayahnya kepada kita semua yang pada hari ini berkumpul dalam acara sosialisasi Skills Development Exchange Pilot sebagai bagian dari implementasi program kerjasama ekonomi berdasarkan Indonesia-Australia Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement atau IA-CEPA. Saya mewakili Sekretaris Jenderal Kementerian Ketenagakerjaan mengucapkan salam hangat dan penghargaan kepada semua pihak yang telah hadir dan mendukung terlaksananya acara ini. Hadirin yang saya hormati, perjanjian IA-CEPA merupakan tonggak penting yang memperkuat hubungan bilateral kedua negara Dan SDA Pilot menjadi salah satu wujud nyata dari komitmen bersama untuk mendorong pertumbuhan ekonomi yang inklusif dan berkelanjutan. Tujuan dari SDE Pilot adalah memfasilitasi pertukaran jangka pendek untuk berbagi keterampilan dan pengalaman kerja praktis antara Indonesia dan Australia. Kedua, memperkuat pemahaman tentang praktek bisnis, pemerintahan, dan budaya di Indonesia maupun Australia. Yang ketiga, memperkuat kerjasama dan kolaborasi antara lembaga pemerintah maupun swasta di Indonesia maupun di Australia dalam pengembangan keterampilan. Dan yang keempat, memungkinkan lembaga bisnis atau perusahaan menyediakan pelatihan dan pengalaman berbasis tempat kerja yang ditargetkan kepada karyawan di Indonesia maupun Australia untuk meningkatkan kompetensi keterampilan. Bagi Indonesia, program ini pastinya juga akan memberikan kesempatan bagi pekerja Indonesia untuk mempelajari budaya, etos kerja, peningkatan kompetensi, dan praktek terbaik di Australia dan sebaliknya. Hadirin yang saya hormati, SD Pilot yang kita sosialisasikan hari ini merupakan wujud konkret dari komitmen bersama dalam memperkuat sektor ketenagakerjaan dan pengembangan kapasitas sumber daya manusia kedua negara. Sejak tanggal berlakunya MOU hingga 30 Juni 2024 telah disepakati jumlah kuota yang diberikan sebanyak 100 peserta. Kemudian dari 1 Juli 2024 hingga 30 Juni 2025 akan dibuka hingga 200 kuota peserta. Selanjutnya, kuota peserta bertambah tiap tahunnya sesuai yang ditetapkan dalam MOU, sehingga total 1.500 orang peserta dalam 5 tahun. Saya harap SD Pilot ini dapat berjalan lancar dan dapat memenuhi kuota yang ditetapkan. Selain itu, saya juga berharap bukan hanya pengiriman karyawan dari perusahaan di Indonesia ke perusahaan di Australia saja, namun juga pengiriman karyawan dari perusahaan di Australia ke perusahaan di Indonesia dapat terrealisasikan. Para hadirin yang terhormat, alhamdulillah SD Pilot memberikan ketertarikan yang cukup besar bagi perusahaan di Indonesia. Hal ini terbukti dengan telah adanya satu perusahaan di Indonesia, yaitu PT Ties Contractors Indonesia yang mengirimkan 12 karyawannya dalam kerangka SD Pilot ke Ties Pty Ltd yang berlokasi di Australia. Agenda ini telah dilaksanakan tahun lalu, tidak lama setelah penandatanganan MOU ini dilakukan. Semoga progres positif tersebut dapat menghasilkan hasil yang memuaskan bagi semua stakeholder. Saya juga mendapat informasi bahwa dalam waktu dekat beberapa perusahaan di Indonesia juga telah terstimulus untuk ikut berperan aktif dalam implementasi SD Pilot ini. Hadirin yang saya hormati, penting untuk diingat bahwa kesuksesan SD Pilot tidak hanya bergantung pada upaya pemerintah, tetapi juga memerlukan dukungan dan partisipasi aktif dari seluruh pemangku kepentingan. Saya mengajak seluruh peserta untuk berkomitmen dalam menjalankan program ini dengan penuh dedikasi, integritas, dan semangat kolaborasi. Sebelum mengakhiri sambutan ini, izinkan saya mengucapkan terima kasih kepada semua pihak yang telah berkontribusi dalam penyelenggaraan acara ini, termasuk para mitra dari Australia yang telah berbagi pengetahuan dan pengalaman mereka. Semoga SD Pilot ini dapat memperkuat kolaborasi dan kerjasama ekonomi yang lebih erat dan memberikan manfaat yang nyata bagi pembangunan ekonomi dan kesejahteraan masyarakat Indonesia dan Australia. Terima kasih. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
From the Australian Embassy in Jakarta, with us today Bapak Simon Anderson, Economic Counselor from Australian Embassy in Indonesia.
Selamat pagi semua bapak-bapak dan ibu-ibu yang hadir pagi ini. Ibu Rati, terima kasih for your words just now. Pak George, Pak Paul, Ibu Jennifer Matthews online, and of course all our colleagues in Canberra who I know are there, but I haven't seen yet. I think they're all listening. First of all, let me wish everyone Salamat Hari Raya Idul Fitri, Mohon Maaf Lahir dan Batin. This is the first time I think we've got together, as Pak George said, since the Ramadan period. The problem with representing government at a business event is that you are put last on the program. The problem with speaking at a business event that Pak George has spoken at is that everything that could have been said has been said already, and everyone that could be introduced has been introduced because Pak George knows you all. So I'm going to have to go off script today and just remind you all a little bit about what the role of the Australian and Indonesian governments are in this process. IA-CEPA, the Indonesia-Australia Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement, was agreed in 2020, came into force in 2021, and it's Indonesia's most comprehensive free trade agreement. A key part of Indonesia's request under that free trade agreement was a skills package. How can free trade agreement be used to enhance and increase the skills of Indonesian workers? The package that we originally came up with under the Skills Development Exchange, it offered an opportunity for businesses in some sectors to send their workers to Australia, and Australian businesses over here, of course, to enhance their skills and build the people-to-people links between our two countries that are so important to our ongoing economic integration. As governments, we thought we had it nailed, but it didn't quite work. So last year, following a period of negotiation between our governments, the Skills Development Exchange was expanded to cover more sectors, to provide more opportunities for Indonesian and Australian businesses to send staff to each other's countries. And I'm sure Pak Daniel will speak about this later, but just for everyone's information, the sectors that are now covered by the Skills Development Exchange, and these are sectors through, if your company works in these sectors, you can think about sending your staff to Australia to work. The sectors are now covered are finance, insurance, information, media and telcos, mining, engineering and related technical services, agriculture, green and creative economies, and tourism and travel. And I just want to add that a lot of these sectors now are sectors where the majority of employees are women, and SMEs, which is a really important part from our perspective of the development opportunities that this also presents. Now, that list of sectors is pretty broad, and Daniel will talk to you about how you identify whether or not you fit into those sectors. But I just want you to think about what the opportunities are for your staff, for your business, to work with your counterparts in Australia, to develop these relationships, to send your teams over there to build skills. We've got companies that are already doing it. I'm sure at some stage we can talk a bit about who they are, perhaps, and sharing information, just to understand how well it's going. But so with that was my off-piste remarks. I really want you to all take this opportunity to be open-minded about what this represents for you and your business, and developing your business in Australia or in Indonesia, and also supporting us to increase the people-to-people links between our two economies. With that, I will pass back to the MC. Thank you very much.
Before heading to the main agenda of the event, I would like to invite Pak Paul Bartlett, Ibu Mukti Suyahmun, Pak Simon, Ibu Rati, Ibu Jennifer Matthew, and Bapak George Marantika to come and take a picture for us. listen to a short presentation on the skill development exchange pilot delivered by Feti Panjaitan, Catalyst Legal and Regulatory Reform Advisor. Mbak Feti, the floor is yours.
Aya. Good morning, esteemed guests from both government, DFAT, Ministry of Manpower, AIBC, IABC committee, and also from companies and organizations that's coming here today. Thank you for taking time to come to this socialization of SDE. My name is Feti Panjaitan. I'm Regulatory Reform Advisor for IA-CEPA Catalyst. And right now I will be the moderator for the technicalities of SDE. And also I will present to you a quick presentations on the scheme of SDE, the process, based on the MOU between both government and also the system that is agreed in place. After my presentation, there will be somebody from DFAT, FTA Mobility Implementation Unit, Daniel Simpson, that will also provide us a quick presentation on the process for DFAT application for approval of SDE. Okay, so without further ado, I will go to the slide presentation here, as you can see. So, skills development exchange, the objectives based on the MOU is to facilitate short-term exchange, to share skills and practical work experience between Indonesia and Australia. And then, as have been mentioned by the opening remarks, the objective is to strengthen understanding of business, government, and cultural practices in Indonesia and Australia. Aside of that, the goal is also to strengthen cooperation between Indonesian and Australian government agencies on collaborative skills development. The last one is, of course, actually, last but not least, is to enable business to provide targeted workplace-based training and experience to employees in Indonesia and Australia so that they can improve skill competencies. Next slide, please. So there are general terms that needs to be fulfilled before trying to join this program. The first one is the placement in specified sector. We will provide the detail in the next slide later. Second is the program will be running until 13 June 2028. And each year, there will be a certain quota applied for the sending from both sides, Indonesia and Australia. Next one is the maximum period of placement in general is 12 months. This is for graduate degree normally, but there are also a maximum 6 months for the lower degree requirements. The last one is during the placement, participant may acquire relevant professional qualification or certification. Okay. Now we go to the next slide on the terms and requirements. We divided three big key terms here from the MOU. The first is individual requirements. Is the participant needs to be a full-time employed, hold relevant educational qualifications for the job placement, possess a language proficiency for the position and the intent of the workplace placement, and the last one is age over 18 years old. There is a particular requirements for Australian, so Indonesian that is sent into Australia to work, that is needs to fulfill UNSCOL level 1 to 3 or a relevant experience according to the word. This part will be explained further from DFAT presentation later on. And then for placement in Indonesia, now this one is, there is a maximum 6 months placement for a first year undergrad level of experience. But aside of that, in general, the maximum period is 12 months. The second one is the requirements, terms and requirements that need to be fulfilled by the institution, the sending and the receiving. The first part is, this is quite broad. Organization or institution that is joining this program needs to be between either branch or sub-organization, or an affiliate organization, a partner organization, or it could also be a member organization of Kadin, Apindo, IABC, ACCI, AI Group, or AIBC. So this is quite broad, actually. And also this one is, of course, the institution needs to sponsor or be responsible for travel expense and administration, training, remuneration, and insurance of the individuals. So this one will be required from the program, and the company will need to provide a sort of a documentation that proves this sponsorship. The last one is the specified sector. So there are, in general, there are 7 sectors that is prioritized to join this program. Those are financial and insurance services, mining, engineering and related technical services, information media and telecommunication, tourism and travel related services, creative economy, agribusiness and food processing, and also green economy. So there are some questions whether if the industry doesn't fall under this, can they still join this program? Of course, the government is opening the opportunities for the industry to give a feedback to join this, and to, of course, can still be considered to participate in this program. But of course, there needs to be a sort of an initiative and proposal coming from industry in Indonesia and Australia. So these are the 3 requirements that is basically mandatory based on the MOU. The next slide is, I will show you how the flow of application in general for placement in Australia. So we see here there are basically 4 institutions that is going to be involved in the process. The first, of course, the internal organizations. There will be assessment whether the organization, the individual fulfill the terms that we have provided in the slides below. And also the sending organization needs to provide letter of support. And also the receiving organization needs to provide job placement letter. The template is not fixed yet, but it can be basically the letter that explains the type of work and placement and the type of training that will be conducted by the participant. And the last one, of course, there will be other internal organization document that is required, like work contract, and also sponsors letter, financial, graduate degree. That is basically may vary based on the company or organization requirements. Aside of international organization, go back to previous slide. The process in Ministry of Manpower is the Indonesia sending organization will need to apply for what is called as UKPS untuk kepentingan perusahaan sendiri. That is a sort of a sending or exit permit, basically to protect the Indonesian migrant worker or Indonesian worker that is being sent abroad. So this needs to be applied by the Indonesia sending organization. The application only one time, so not per individual, but the detail of this will be basically will be shared during the Q&A from the Ministry of Manpower. Aside of Ministry of Manpower, there will be a process in Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade, where the Australian organization that receiving the participants, they will apply for placement approval from DFAT. It's just like, it's a letter of approval, but the process is online by submitting the application through the email contact that we provided here. The last one is after obtaining these documents, then the immigration or visa application process. For this program, the visa that is applied to Australian Immigration Authority Department of Home Affairs is temporary work visa subclass 403. So this is very important because the subclass 403 have, I think, a lesser, it's a more simple requirement process compared to other, a couple of temporary work visa. Subclass 403 is the one that will be applied by the participant. Next slide, please. Now, the flow of application for placement in Indonesia is a little bit similar, but of course, the Ministry of Manpower process will be different. The internal organization, the document is similar. Job placement letter from receiving organization and also other internal organization documents. But in the Ministry of Manpower, the Indonesian host company will apply for RPTKA. So RPTKA in general, there will be online application through the TKA online platform. This is the same like when companies applying for all other types of RPTKA. And then after the RPTKA is legalized, then the process will be continued with the individual e-visa process. The index is C312, and this is also applied online through the platform. In terms of the process for the Australian organization, actually there are two paths for obtaining the approval letter. First is the Australian organization can contact DFAT through the same email contact that was given to you for DFAT to provide an approval letter for the placement in Indonesia. Or this is very interesting because the MOU provide commercial associations such as Kadin, IABC to provide a letter of acknowledgement for the placement. So this one can really simplify and expedite the process of approval. So this is the difference between the placement to Australia and placement to Indonesia. In Indonesia, there is a commercial association letter of acknowledgement. The next slide, please. Okay, so I think that's the end of the flow of process for the SDE according to the MOU. Next, I think online with me, Daniel Simpson, already here, from FTA Mobility Implementation Unit, DFAT Canberra. Dan, hello.
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, okay. So
Fantastic.
Yeah, the next process in DFAT, Dan will provide you a quick presentation, and then the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and good morning to all esteemed guests attending today. Thanks to Pak George, to Jennifer, Ibu Rati for Pak Sanusi. Hello, Simon and Paul, for your comments this morning. And thanks also to Ibu Fiti, who just presented that very informative overview of the SD pilot. My objective today is to go beyond the high-level framework and to provide insights into the way that workers and businesses, Indonesian workers, Australian hosts and Indonesian sending organisations can get involved. So I'm going to focus on the way that my agency, the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade, processes applications. So next slide, please. So what is it? I guess I'll restate sort of the overview of the SDE pilot. The Skills Development Exchange pilot, or the SDE pilot as I call it, it gives organisations in Australia and Indonesia the opportunity to send employees to undertake workplace placements for up to 12 months in the other country. so it's an opportunity, it's a chance, it's a framework that is already built to enable the flow of workers from either country to go and have a cultural experience as well as a skills building experience in the other country, and that's quite a unique opportunity in the broad framework of the free trade agreement work that we do. It is a streamlined opportunity as well, and I might talk to that a little bit later, but basically it's something that's there and it's ready to be used by business and by workers to upskill. In Australia, the ST pilot is managed by the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade in Canberra. So the team that does the application processing is based in Canberra. But of course, we work closely with our colleagues in the Australian Embassy in Jakarta, Pak Simon, who's joined us today. And we collaborate with the Embassy in Jakarta to promote understanding and ultimately usage of the pilot. So next slide, please. In DFAT, the team that's responsible for the application processing is the team that I work in, and that's called the FTA Mobility Implementation Unit, or the FTA MOU. And we're responsible for processing applications for Indonesians to participate in placements in Australia. So what that means is that we work closely ultimately with the host organisation in Australia, who typically leads the application process on behalf of an Indonesian exchangee. So the information that we, Australia, DFAT, need about the exchangee and the information we need from the sending organisation in Indonesia will come to us through the host organisation in Australia. So what that means is that we can't accept applications from individual workers alone, unless of course they can demonstrate that they already have an in-principle agreement for a placement between their employer in Indonesia, or the sending organisation, and a host organisation in Australia. Of course, if individuals can supply the letter of support or the documentation from the sending organisation, or the letter of offer from the host organisation, they are able to apply. But ultimately, the FTA MOU will need to be comfortable that there is already that three-way, in principle, agreement in place, because the ST pilot at its core involves three parties. It's the worker themselves, the sending, and the host organisation. So at the end of the application process, Australia provides the exchangee with a letter of support. Now, that letter of support is the key ingredient for the visa that enables the exchangee to come and to do the placement in Australia. And as Ibu Fiti already mentioned, the visa is called the Subclass 403 Government Agreement Stream Visa. And this is a visa that is quite low on its paperwork. The key thing really is the letter of support from DFAT. So this can be quite a sort of a streamlined visa process. But it is, I should point out, a separate process. Ultimately, the exchangee from Indonesia will need to go to the Australian Department of Home Affairs and apply for the visa. That's a separate process, but having that letter of support from DFAT goes an awful long way. The next slide, please. So the question, that we get asked is how can business get involved? How do I get involved? How does it all start? I think probably the best way to look at it is about starting conversations, having discussions. So if you're an individual, a worker in a firm in Indonesia, then you can discuss, the opportunity that the pilot has with your employer. Now, the pilot allows for a range of training and skills dividend. It can be formal training alongside the workplace-based training, which is the focus of the pilot, but there can also be formal training, and people can, if they're eligible, participate in qualification upgrades or attendance at Australia's higher education institutions. If that's eligible, that can certainly be done. If you're an organization and you're interested in the opportunity, then the conversation starts with, I guess, perhaps your office in the other country, or conversations with your branches, subsidiaries, affiliates, joint venture partners, even your business clients. So there's a range of relationships between host and sending organizations that are allowable for participation in the pilot. And the MOU does specify the sorts of relationships that qualify participation, but quite importantly and quite value, and and obviously something that also makes this a much more broad-based opportunity is that organizations can get involved as long as they are a member of the three peak bodies in their respective country that are identified in the MOU. So of course that includes IABC and IABC, but also CARIN, APINDO, and in Australia, the Australian Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and AI Group. So there's a lot of opportunity to get involved from the corporate perspective. And I should also point out that DFAT is very happy to work through the peak bodies, with the peak bodies, to help organisations get involved. We have a team set up in Canberra which can help people understand better the way to get involved. And of course, colleagues in Jakarta are available to help as well. So once a placement begins to sort of take shape, then that's the point where an Australian organisation, host organisation, can get in contact with the FTA MIU. We will send a link to our online application form. We have like an online system set up, purpose-built for this process, for the STE pilot. And once the application is completed, including the letter of offer from the host organisation in Australia and the letter of support from the sending organisation in Indonesia, the FTA MIU, we can process applications quite quickly. We're sort of looking at around 7 days. As long as all the paperwork's in good order, we can provide an outcome to the organisations and the individual in about 7 days. Now, the permit to work overseas, as we've heard before, that's something that's handled by the Ministry of Manpower, by Kemenaka. That's a separate process. But perhaps we can hear more about that process from colleagues today if those questions arise. Next slide, please. So what I'll do, I'll just run through quite quickly the application form, so you can get a sense of what the sort of the paperwork looks like. First question there is quite straightforward. Are you currently employed by the sending organisation? So this is a question directed to an Indonesian worker or the host organisation Australia who's helping them fill this form out. Quite simply, yes or no, I'm not sure. Well, you need to be employed full-time, of course. So yes is what we need to see there. The next question goes to skill level. And as we heard in the presentation from Katalis, that Australia's requirement is that participants in Australia need to take positions in occupations in Australia that are defined within the ANSCO skill level 1, 2, and 3. So what is ANSCO? So ANSCO is Australia's national framework for occupational skill level. Every occupation in Australia is given a notional skill level by ANSCO. Skill levels 1, 2, and 3, they represent occupations that require post-secondary school qualifications. So that's things like technical certificates, diplomas, and university degrees, of course. Now, I should point out there are around 700 occupations in those 3 levels. So it's very comprehensive. There's an awful lot of work, a lot of employment in Australia that sits within those skill levels. Next slide, please. Thank you. This part of the form builds on the ANSCO question. So at this point, we're asking people to identify the occupation that they will undertake in Australia. And you can basically browse the ANSCO framework and just find the occupation. It's not a hard process to do, and there's an online, there's a URL that's provided in the application form to help that. Again, another ANSCO related question, we just need the 6-digit code that comes straight from the ANSCO framework. Again, that's quite easy to locate. Next slide, please. This part of the form is just collecting basic personal data, the exchangee's name, their address, their email, contact numbers, and their date of birth, because of course you have to be over 18 to participate in the SDE pilot, irrespective of whether you're going to Australia or Indonesia. And the next slide, please. So at this point, this is where the opportunity is created to upload the two critical, I guess, documents for the SDE pilot. First of all, being the letter of support from the sending organisation. So that will be a template or form letter coming from the Indonesian's current employer that states the things that we need to see. So, for example, the name of the employer, the role they're doing, plus the assurance that when they return to Indonesia, or in the case of an Australian going to Indonesia, that the role will be there for them to go back to, that they are going to return to a job, basically. The second part of this part of the application form is where the host organisation can upload the letter of offer. Again, a critical piece of paper. That letter is where the host organisation will identify the job that's being done or the placement's being done, spell out where the role will be, but also make certain assurances around things like compliance with local workplace law, questions around insurance, that the worker will have insurance, access to health insurance, and things like that. So the MOU between Australia and Indonesia stipulates the things that need to be in these respective letters, and people can go to the MOU or even the DFAT website and look a little bit more, look in detail about what's needed there. But those letters, letter of support and letter of offer, these are the two key ingredients of the application process. If those letters are all in good shape, then that's a lot of the work already achieved in the application process. And then the last two questions there, when do you expect the placement to start? When do you expect it to end? Because of course that will determine the length of the visa that the Department of Home Affairs, in Australia's case, will grant to the exchangee. Next slide, please. Thank you. That image there are the first 12 exchangees that have participated in the pilot. These individuals, this group here, are all working in the Bowen Basin right now in Queensland in Australia on their placements. And we were very excited to welcome these groups through, and let's work with everyone to increase uptake, and we're looking for more applications. So I hope that was useful to everyone to understand a bit more about the process, and I'll leave the presentation there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dan Simpson. Please stay with us for the Q&A session. And right now, audience, we are moving to the Q&A. But before that, I will invite a resource person from the Ministry of Manpower to come on stage with me. Ibu Ratih Rulianti from Cooperation Bureau. Bapak Gede Wira Pradya from Placement and Protection Program for Migrant Worker, BP2MI. And Bapak Budi Wikaning Tias from Directorate of Foreign Workers Utilization Management. Please join us on stage for the question and answer session. So we have quite a full team here right now. That because in the Ministry of Manpower, for the process of placement to Australia, mostly the company will deal with the INA P2PI for UKTS letter. So there is resource person here from the Ministry of Manpower, and for the process from Australia to Indonesia, RPTKA, we also have from Director of Foreign Workers Utilization Management, and also Ibu Ratih here from the agreement, international agreement implementation. So the Cooperation Bureau of Manpower Ministry. So Thank you for already joining us here. So I will open the first question and answer session as usual to the on-site participant first. Maybe for the first two questions, can raise your hands and the organizer can give the mic to, please introduce name of institutions and sector if possible. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you very much. I much appreciate this event. My name is Ian Wolf from the AusIMM Geoscience Society. My burning question is how many Indonesians have gone to Australia and how many Australians have gone to Indonesia at present under this system?
Okay, the second question maybe from the on-site audience. Anybody wants to? Okay.
My name is Robi Agustiar. I'm from Australian Agriculture Management Investment Group. We have some office also in Indonesia and in Australia. So we'll be sending our employee from Indonesia to Australia. So my question is about the timeline, both in Australia, in Indonesia, and of course in Indonesia, how long to take the time from get the approval from the Minister of Manpower, and then from the immigration process, etc. Thank you very much.
Okay, I think Pak George, raising hand here too. Yes. Can give the mic to Pak George here. Okay.
Yeah, my question is to the Kementerian Tenaga Kerja ya. Jadi dalam konteks di Indonesia ya. So excuse me, I'll speak in Indonesian ya. Jadi ini kan skills development ya. Jadi di dalam konteks kita kan kalau skills development itu kan ada output sertifikasi kan mestinya. Nah kira-kira output itu bagaimana strukturnya di dalam program ini. So this leads to again what my remarks earlier today is how, and specifically I guess from my context, and I could also say that I represent IABC and Kadin ya. So I chair the Indonesian Chamber of Commerce and Industry Australian Bilateral Committee. Jadi dari sisi Kadin juga, dari Komite Australia Kadin, bagaimana kita, karena itu kan nanti biar ada proses produktifnya ya, di dalam konteks SDM tersebut. Nah ini pertanyaan ke Kemenaker, this question is directly related to the Indonesian context to our Ministry of Manpower. Ya. Terima kasih.
Okay, thank you, Pak George. So we will start to answer the first three questions too, but organizer maybe can keep the other question to later in the session too. Bu Rati, I think we will start with the first question, Bu. The partisipan dari both sides.
Thank you for the opportunity. Maybe I will answer in bahasa. Untuk partisipan yang telah ada dalam implementasi SD pilot ini, sampai saat ini baru terdaftar 12 orang dari warga negara Indonesia. Jadi 12 orang itu berasal dari PT TIS Contractors Indonesia dalam skema UKPS atau untuk kepentingan perusahaan sendiri, yang mana mereka dikirimkan ke TIS PTY Ltd di Australia. Namun untuk warga negara Australia yang bekerja di bawah skema SD ini sampai sekarang masih dalam penjajakan, jadi belum terrealisasi hingga saat ini. Terima kasih. Mungkin ada yang mau ditambahkan dari rekan saya? Terima kasih, Mbak.
Oke. Pertanyaan selanjutnya ya, untuk timeline dari Australian Agriculture Investment Group, ini timelinenya untuk sending to Australia ya Pak ya? Berarti pertanyaannya timeline proses UKPS sendiri, and timeline dari DIFAT tadi sebenarnya sudah memberikan timeline ya di presentasi Dan. Jadi mungkin lebih ke proses UKPS-nya dulu dari Pak Wira ya, Pak Wira. Oke, silakan Pak.
Terima kasih. There's two questions for me. The first is how many Indonesian to Australia before the STA scheme. Based on our data from year 2018 until 2023, there are about 23,000 Indonesian workers working to Australia. And the second question about the timeline, how long take time the process? I think there are some different process for the UKPS. The first process is apply approval letter to the Ministry to Manpower. There is take 5 days until the Ministry accept a complete document, and after this the process is register the worker to BP2MI. There is two other process. Kalau di BP2MI karena lewat sistem nggak akan lama, mungkin 1 hari Pak. After the approval letter from the Ministry of Manpower.
Ya. Itu hari kalender ya Pak ya? Atau
hari kerja.
So 6 working days since the completion
After the complete document.
the documents more or less ya Pak. So there are 2 process in the manpower, UKPS and also the individual ya. UKPS is for the company and BP2PMI is for the individual participant to be registered in BP2PMI. Just to clarify Pak, so let's say company sent 5 individuals, so the 5 individuals, each of them is registered to BP2PMI.
Yes, for register, there is a need. Every person needs to register,
Okay.
but for the approval letter,
For
only one.
UKPS, just the company. Okay. Okay, so it is 6 days, and I think then the question is about the timeline to send to Australia. There is already presentation from Dan Simpson. The process will take around 7 days online to obtain the approval. So I think more or less Pak, the process will be 2 or 3 weeks ya, if we generalize the total preparation in the manpower and also Ministry of Manpower and also in the DFAT. The next question is from Pak George. Maybe this is to Ministry of Manpower. Saya berikan kesempatan Mbak Rati, silakan dalam bahasa or English, feel free.
Terima kasih Mbak Feti. Terima kasih Pak George atas pertanyaannya. Izin menjawab terkait output sertifikasi, itu memang sudah kedua belah pihak sudah mendiskusikannya Bapak, dan dalam hal ini kami sedang menyusun bagaimana proses atau alur bisnis yang akan terjadi dalam SD pilot, dalam implementasi SD pilot ini dari awal hingga akhir, dari mulai penjajakan memberangkatkan para peserta hingga para peserta kembali ke negaranya masing-masing, yang mana salah satu proses yang kami usulkan di dalamnya adalah bagaimana para peserta mendapatkan sertifikasi yang membuktikan bahwa mereka telah mengikuti dan menyelesaikan program SD pilot tersebut. Dan dalam konteks ini kami memang mengusulkan agar sertifikasi tersebut dikeluarkan oleh masing-masing perusahaan Bapak, yang mana para peserta tersebut bekerja di dalamnya, sehingga dengan issued oleh masing-masing perusahaan tempat mereka bekerja itu hasilnya mewakili bagaimana kinerja para masing-masing peserta itu, dan diharapkan ke depannya Certificate of Employment tersebut dapat juga memperkaya ya koleksi atau hasil pencapaian bagi masing-masing peserta. Demikian Bapak, terima kasih. Baik Pak.
Tambahnya buat, jadi mungkin I apologize speak in Indonesian. Just untuk follow up question. Jadi mungkin di sini nilai tambah buat sumber daya manusia di Indonesia itu memang kalau kita bicara investasi dari pengembangan skill itu biasanya memang perlu ada kaitan dengan sertifikasi. Karena struktur daripada Indonesian Qualification Framework itu kan memang sedang dibangun ya dengan proses alignment dengan sertifikasi. Jadi saya kira mungkin kami dari sisi Kadin, and tentunya IBC siap untuk mendukung Kementerian Tenaga Kerja, mungkin untuk membantu merumuskan ya. Karena kalau saya dengar di sini masih dirumuskan ini ya. So kami siap mendukung dan membantu. Karena tadi menurut kami sih harus terintegrasi Bu. Nanti outputnya pasti sesuai dengan tema tadi saya lihat di billboard ini, memaksimalkan manfaat IA-CEPA bagi Indonesia dan Australia. Jadi itu saran dan usulan dari sisi khususnya untuk dari konteks Indonesia ya, untuk Kementerian Tenaga Kerja.
Untuk skill recognition kedua negara ya Pak?
Iya betul Bu. Ya.
Sebelum keberangkatan berarti itu ya?
Ya itu harus dirumuskan. Bagaimana dari sisi Ibu, kami dari Kadin tentunya siap untuk mendukung dan juga IBC. So just for our colleagues in English, from the context of Indonesian human resources, I think what Ibu has just shared from Kementerian Tenaga Kerja or from Manpower Ministry is very crucial, yeah, and that is the alignment with certification. And in the context of this particular matter, I think the ministry is formulating, lagi merumuskan, is formulating that policy, and we are happy to support the ministry in this context in terms of the formulation of that, so that we can maximize the IA-CEPA utilization in this context for skills exchange between Indonesia and Australia. Terima kasih ya Ibu dari Kementerian.
Terima kasih Pak.
Yeah, thank you, Pak George. Yeah, I think it's very good input from Pak George. There needs to be a sort of for the purpose of in evaluation and improvement, also for the post-training report or post-training the certification from the training, right, to be a government input, right, so that to know that whether this scheme is successful, or how is the company doing with the program, the participants. So I think that one from Kemenaker, previously when we have discussion, Pak, we already see a post-training scheme that is but under discussion from the Kemenaker internally. So I think thank you very much, Pak George, for the input. We will continue with the session. Next session question. I think there are some hands raised that haven't been addressed. This side, yes. Organizer, can you send the mic?
Ya, selamat Pak. Halo. Selamat pagi, good morning. Thank you for sharing the insights so far. My name's Thea Kurniawan. I represent Tunas Resin. So we are a local chemical manufacturing plant here, and we are more in the engineering technical space. My question is, the program so far has been very insightful, and you've shared the timeline and the application process. I was wondering if IA-CEPA or MOM does support partnerships that are either existing or about to commence. So to provide very quick context, we have already secured our partnership. It's not really corporate to corporate, but we go to an Australian university. So it hasn't fully kicked off yet, it's about to, but it was, you know, an agreement done directly prior to me learning about, you know, SDEP. So I was just wondering if there's resources or if there is an opportunity to still engage with IA-CEPA and get support for existing partnerships. Thank you.
Okay, I think the second one is from the back side, that side. Yes, please. Okay. Then
Selamat pagi,
third one.
good morning. Tim Anderson from Sun Cable. We have 4 offices in Australia and 1 in Indonesia and a few project sites. So my question is probably very technical, so apologies. Just to understand the nature of the SDE program, is that, so if we have staff in Indonesia we wish to send to our companies in Australia, is it a nature of a secondment? In other words, the employment terms and conditions that exist for that employee in Indonesia still apply while they work in Australia? Or alternatively, do they have to meet minimum wage requirements and be fully compliant with Australian labour laws as far as all of the terms and conditions? And then second part is, if it is a secondment, what are the obligations on the sending company, for example, our company in Indonesia sending staff to Australia, to ensure that they have minimum living expenses and other necessities for them to be able to live if they are in fact seconded to Australia, because the cost of living obviously is quite different, and vice versa. If staff are coming from Australia up here, then the cost of living here can be quite challenging for short-term assignments. So those kind of details would be very fantastic if you could just share what the requirements are both ways.
Okay, the third one from this side.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Selvi. I'm from CPA Australia. So for anyone that doesn't know, CPA Australia, it's a professional body for accountant and finance professionals. So I think this is very interesting. First of all, because I found that accountant auditors are categorized as skills level 1 under the scheme. And just to give a background, that there are many accountants in Indonesia that also keen to explore skills development or career opportunity in Australia. But as we know that in Australia, for a professional accountant position, mostly it will require to have a professional qualification, and one of it is from CPA Australia and the other one is from another body. So I think my first question is, for example, for someone that is interested to explore accountant position under this SDE, first question is, does this individual need to fulfill as well on the professional qualification requirement or not? And the second question is, if this person does not does not fulfill the qualification on the professional designation, will there be an opportunity during the 1-year term for them to obtain the designation from one of the bodies? I think that those are the 2 questions. And I think lastly, what I want to highlight is, because CPA Australia, we have a representative office here, we're more than happy as well to support in the needs of professional qualification for accountant and auditors professionals. I think that's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I will give like one quick question from the online. Is it direct question? Yeah. Silakan,
Hello,
Mbak
good
Setiarini.
morning.
Yes.
Thank you for the opportunity. I would like to ask two questions actually about creative economy. So there is it's one of the skill that's under the development exchange pilot. So what kind of creative economy, as we all know that creative industry is such a wide sector. So what kind of creative industry that can be participated in this program? And then the second, I already write in the chat about the online courses. So we've mentioned before about the requirements for including into this program. So does it also apply for the online courses in iaskills.org, if I'm not mentioned? I've served some of the programs there, and then I found several programs that really interesting for us, especially for the SME sector in Indonesia. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. We will start with the first questions. Okay, so the first question is for whether IA-CEPA support partnership. So this is it the partnership in terms of there is an MOU or partnership agreement already in place for the SDE program. I mean, the company have signed with university for partnership, either R&D or can.
Pertanyaan saya mengenai ya, apakah kita bisa dapat support lagi gitu atau SDEP ini khusus untuk kerjasamaan yang baru gitu?
Okay, so for the existing. Yeah, or ongoing partnership.
It's existing. Yep.
I think it's the MOU itself says partnership as one of the category. So it's very clear that the ongoing one. So it's not a new one, but there is a cycle, of course, and the period of the program that needs to be fulfilled. So that is the limitations, I think, in order for the partnership to join the program. But maybe from Kemenaker or from Dan Simpson, if you want to add to in answering this.
If I may take the floor, if that's okay with Kemenaker. I think just to make the fundamental point that this is a mobility pathway. So this is at its core about opportunities for Indonesian and Australian organisations to work together to upskill individuals, and then ultimately there's a payoff for the overall skill quotient or quantum in the organisations, the respective organisations. That can be skills, technical skills for the individual, but it can also be those softer skills, those cross-cultural skills. Now, if the question is about whether or not a commercial enterprise in one economy can do a partnership with, say, a university, my response to that would be possibly if they meet the preconditions set down in the MOU, and I think the relevant bit is 4.4 of the MOU. But I'm more than happy, and I'm sure as is Kemenaker, to take this issue and look at it more closely, perhaps offline and out of session. But absolutely right, the MOU does talk about partnerships. I'm just going to go to the MOU itself. And here, so an organisation and an established partner organisation, for example, between joint venture partners, businesses with existing formal links, or between a business and an established client. So that's the unpacking of the relationship between organisations and partner organisations. So perhaps that might work for the question that was raised. But happy to take the question offline and look at the scenario a bit more closely if that helps. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I think the discussion also relate with the second questions. I mean, there are different types of model for companies to send employee between Indonesia and Australia, and one of them is the secondment. So I think the related with the questions from the audience here, how does the secondment, the nature of secondment, is it fulfill the program, and how far is the compliance? Is it the labor law and also the other requirements that is the secondment is a different type of model with? Can you please clarify here?
Look, again, I might take the floor because I think that's a question that might be specific to the Australian scenario as we're an Australian organisation hosts. You know, whether you call them a secondment or a placement, I think broadly defined, we're talking about the same, possibly the same thing. The MOU is quite clear about the stipulations on host organisations, whether that is an Australian host organisation or an Indonesian host organisation. One of the key responsibilities of the host organisation is to ensure that the participant, the exchangee, is working to local workplace law. So that includes remuneration, conditions, those sorts of things. So when we look at the applications we've received to date, Australia needs to be comfortable that the person participating is subject to the Workplace Act and all the other various Commonwealth, state, territory legislation that's in place that governs the relationship between employees and employers. The other thing that host organisations are responsible, and this comes from the MOU, they're responsible for funding the travel. They're responsible for funding any training that's planned or programmed out for the placement. They're responsible for the cost of insurances, health insurance, and insurances that might be specific to the occupation. And I'll probably leave it there. Thank you.
Okay. So then just one quick clarity. So because the MOU said that the costs basically with the program will be borne by the institutions, but is it need to be from the hosting institutions or from the sending organizations, or it can be as long as whichever company that is providing the sponsor, either the sending or the receiving, both are accepted?
I think possibly the underlying point is that the exchangee is not bearing the cost. So both Australia and Indonesia, you know, have arranged, have come to the terms in the MOU, the basic principles that the exchanges themselves are not paying for these things, that they are ultimately being met by the organisations. The MOU says in the first principle, or in the first instance, that it's the host organisation that is responsible for those things. I guess that would make sense because they are hosting the individual. The host organisation will be ultimately guided or sanctioned by their local workplace law. So it makes sense that the host organisation, at least in the first instance, has the responsibility for those things. But as I said, it's important that exchangees aren't being left for bills, which is why the MOU has text on this.
Okay,
Thanks.
thank you. Does it, or there is follow-up questions for clarity?
I think that covers it. So just to be clear in terms of what we've understood, so if I have an employee with 2 years experience being paid 20 million rupiah per month in Indonesia, we send them to Australia, the equivalent role is a 70,000 Australian dollar per annum role. The obligation is on the receiving organisation to pay that secondee $70,000 in accordance with both the skill and market conditions and applicable laws in Australia for that role.
Short answer would be yes. Yeah. If it's, yeah. I'm sorry, I think I've just jumped in, but yeah, the short answer would be yes. Yeah.
Okay. So I think then this is very related. I think it's very related with how the labor law in the placement country rules. I mean, it applies to both sides in Indonesia. What is the standard? Because the MOU definitely said that the organizations and the individuals need to comply with the local labor law and requirements. So there are flexibilities, but there's also limitations that you need to follow whatever the rules and regulations that is prescribed in the placement. Like sometimes different state also have probably different labor law for certain professions. That also needs to be fulfilled by the participants. So even though it's under the scheme of agreement, but the compliance to the local law still be required. So I hope that, but if that clarifies, but if not, then after this we can also discuss. The next questions would be on the CPA. I think then this is also the question to you. There is a requirement for the skills level, so if they don't fulfill this unschooled skill level, can they still be like considered for the job position or for the program?
Okay, so the ANSCO is non-negotiable. So the and this is the terms of the text agree between Australia and Indonesia. The occupation that Indonesian exchangees through the workplace placement are taking in Australia must be at the ANSCO skill levels 1, 2, and 3. So that's a non-negotiable. I think there was also another question or another part of the question about whether there was, I think, essentially mutual recognition of skills, something along those lines. Now, the MOU says for both Australia and Indonesia that people must have, if they're working in what we call regulated occupations, then they must have the licenses, qualifications, accreditations to do that work. So for example, someone coming into Australia to be, say, a clinician working in a medical sort of situation, if there are Australian stipulations around qualifications, licenses, whatever, they need to have those. And likewise going into Indonesia. So if the question is, can a certified practicing accountant, a CPA, work in Australia from Indonesia as an equal to an Australian CPA? Well, I'm not really that familiar with the way accounting accreditation works, but I would suspect that it might not be the case that in all cases an Indonesian accountant could practice on equal terms as an Australian accountant. But that's not to say that someone could come in and do accounting support work or stuff that might be not squarely practicing accounting work as a way of sort of building their skills, and a skill set towards the eventual qualification. These sorts of questions are very specific, and we're more than happy to take them offline through our email address, which I think might have been shared earlier on. We can definitely unpack that. I think, it might be a bit tricky when we're talking about equivalency between the two economies, and that can go both ways, of course. But yeah, happy to sort of unpack this one offline if you think you need, more clarification.
Okay, so we're gonna answer the online question first from Bustiarini. I think this is for Manpower. Creative economy sector, what are the industry category that is in this sector? And also there is a questions on skills exchange, online skills exchange. We have a person from Catalyst that I think joining here later will answer the questions on the skills exchange. But first from Kemenaker, from Manpower Ministry, on the creative economy, what kind of industry SME that categorized as qualified for this? I think the issue is because there are 7 priority sector in the MOU, but for the sectoral categorization, actually it's more to the, yes, it's more to the company that will define which sector they are in usually. But for creative economy, Catalyst have some prior work in creative economy too. So there are different industry sector for Indonesia and Australia in terms of the creative economy. But maybe we will answer from the Indonesian side first, Bu. Bu Setiarini, pardon me in bahasa, tanya apa aja yang masuk gitu loh, yang bisa. Oke.
Ibu Setiarini mungkin saya bantu menjawab untuk dengan bahasa Indonesia untuk sektor-sektor yang sudah tercantum dalam MOU itu ada 7. Yang pertama layanan keuangan dan asuransi, kemudian pertambangan, teknik dan layanan teknis terkait, media informasi dan layanan telekomunikasi, layanan terkait pariwisata dan perjalanan, ekonomi kreatif, agribisnis dan pengolahan makanan, serta ekonomi hijau. Untuk SMI mungkin nanti bisa masuk ke dalam ekonomi kreatif ya.
Mungkin ada definisi juga kan industri dari Kementerian Kemenparekraf ya untuk ekonomi kreatif Bu Setiarini, jadi bisa refer ke situ juga ya untuk kategori dari industri. Tapi dalam aplikasi sepertinya hanya stating the company aja ya, company dan sektornya nanti akan lebih kepada dari company yang mendefinisikan gitu ya Mbak?
Iya betul. Jadi nanti sektornya itu sesuai yang di MOU, namun jika di luar dari sektor yang ditetapkan dalam MOU bisa dipertimbangkan lagi permohonannya untuk persetujuan lebih lanjut oleh kedua belah negara ya, kedua belah pihak. Seperti itu. Namun pengirimannya itu dalam skema UKPS ya, untuk kepentingan perusahaan sendiri.
Oke, semoga ini menjawab ya. The second question, I think there is a skills team from Catalyst that will answer Bu Setiarini. Can the microphone goes to Pak John here?
Thanks very much. I'm John from Catalyst. I believe there was a question around the relationship between the Skills Development Exchange pilot and Catalyst's IA-skills.org. I understand where the question's coming from because they both have very similar names, but in fact the platform, IA-skills.org, is a way to connect Indonesian businesses with Australian training organisations. So if there's any Indonesian businesses here today who are not registered on IA-skills.org, we would encourage you to register. Many of Australia's best training organisations are there, and it's very easy to link with them. There's no direct relationship between these two bodies, the Skills Development Exchange pilot and the Skills Exchange. So the courses there are not a prerequisite for people trying to apply for the SDE pilot. It's more for training in Indonesia by Australian RTOs. Out of interest, over the course of this year, Catalyst will be uploading 40 micro-credentials to Indonesian platforms like Traveloka, Business Center, and Pintar in sectors like digital literacy, healthcare, business, tourism, and other sectors. And they're available for individuals, not just for businesses. Please keep your eye on that space. And of course, you're welcome to get back to me if you have any questions. Thanks so much.
Yes. Thank you, Pak John, for the clarification. But maybe this is a very interesting input for the SDE program. So this is like a sort of an extension from the question and Dan here. So the model of SDE right now is for the on-site training for people to go to Australia for training and from Australia to Indonesia for training. But this is like a follow-up questions whether this will also accommodate a hybrid training program, because but maybe there will also be like in the future training that is combining the online and also an on-site training model that you know in some more non-traditional industries would probably go through this path. So maybe this is a very good input for the government to consider, because of course this is also a good thing. Catalyst have an online training project, skills development project too, and the combination of this will basically expedite, right, the process, and also can basically lowering the costs of skills acquisition. So this would be just maybe an input book for Kemenaker, so for the future discussion in international. So I will move to if there is 2 other questions from the floor here, and then we will move next to the online because there are a couple of questions. So the organizer, can you please give the mic to the on-site? Maybe from this side haven't been addressed.
Hello.
Yes.
Vincent from Business, computer science student. My question is, will there be opportunity for students to get involved in this program?
Okay, so the opportunity for means undergraduate training. Okay, so that's the first questions, and the second one, the microphone can be. I think there are still a lot of raising hands here.
Thank you very much. Quick question is on taxation. If Indonesians go to Australia and they earn a high salary, they pay tax in Australia. When they come back to Indonesia, do they have to adjust their tax? And for, say, Australians coming to Indonesia, do they have to apply global taxation? Can you tell us a little bit about how the tax works and if there are tax breaks?
Okay, so there's a question on tax. And I think the third one, let's give additional additional participant to ask questions here.
Yes. My name is Doni from PT Tanah Biotechnologies Indonesia. And now we have the project together with University of Indonesia. Our project is to develop the mRNA vaccine. So, but we have a very close relation with the UNSW. In this case is ARENA Institute. We know in the ARENA Institute they have more experience to build the new platform of the vaccine. In this case, mRNA vaccine that got the Nobel last year. And our plan is to develop the dengue vaccine in Indonesia together with our partner, University of Indonesia, and we will make the vaccine in Australia for the faster progress. So we will have the connection with the University of New South Wales there, and we will make the prototype of the vaccine, because in our company, in Itana Biotechnologies Indonesia, we already has the facilities to produce this vaccine. We already do this program also can bridging and give the support for this to send our researcher here from Itana Biotechnologies, University of Indonesia, and also the University of New South Wales to make the vaccine together in Australia, and then we can just share also the IP of this vaccine in the next 3 years. It will be the prototype of the new vaccine. Thank you.
Okay, I will close for now the on-site, but I think we might still have some time left after the answer session to give some opportunities for the floor participants. Let's go to the first three questions. First, one, is there any opportunity for student skills in this SDE? Second is about tax, and the third one I will send this question. Perhaps Dan Simpson, do you want to answer first before our resource from Manpower will give input?
Thank you for giving me the floor. In relation to the question about students, the way that the MOU is written, it does state that it's about
So it's connection issue? Or we go to the Manpower first. Bu Rati, student Bu, is there any opportunity to join this SDE?
Ya, mungkin saya mencoba menjawab. Untuk skema kerjasama ini memang antara perusahaan di Indonesia dengan perusahaan di Australia. Dan memang di dalam MOU itu sudah diatur, sudah ditentukan persyaratan bagi para pesertanya. Namun untuk peserta itu sendiri, jika memang dia sudah lulus dari lulus sarjana, itu tetap tergantung dari tempat di perusahaan dia bekerja. Karena perusahaan tersebut harus awalnya harus memiliki dulu cooperation contract antara perusahaan di Indonesia tersebut dengan perusahaan di Australia, dan perusahaan itulah yang nantinya akan menentukan kandidat-kandidat untuk ikut menjadi partisipan SD pilot tersebut dengan requirement yang telah ditetapkan dalam MOU. Ada yang bisa mau menambahkan mungkin Ibu Budi atau?
Yeah, just adding about the question on student. I mean there are different. I mean there are undergrad, graduate, and also PhD students. So I think the main requirement is whether they have the level of experience for the job position. This is a very fundamental. I mean, there are of course some acknowledgement for students that maybe have the experience to do the work that is in the job position, but this needs to be demonstrated from the documentation, that letter of support and the job offer. I think that is the important thing, yeah, Bu Rati. So it's not that student cannot join this, but whether they have the level of experience to, and they can demonstrate that they do have, because sometimes there are jobs that needs an academic credentials, especially when related with ANSCO in Australia. The skill level, there needs to be not just the academic certification, but sometimes a professional certification is also required. So I think the question is more to the job position and the job requirements. So I think that's hopefully addressing the question whether student can join. The second one is about tax. Right now we don't have the resource person in tax, unfortunately. However, maybe just waiting for them to join online again. Maybe Pak, if I may answer in the general terms, for Indonesian, usually there will be a tax reporting requirements in general, definitely. But of course, for whether they need to pay tax again and how the company, I think usually company have their own tax calculations, either sending organization or receiving organizations. They must have tax compliance internal division that will conduct this kind of assessment. but also needs to check. I think Indonesia has a tax agreement with Australia too, and this will follow into the tax tax agreement that is agreed between countries. So I think in general that is what we can answer from your question on tax. And I think different different level of income, different level of salary also have different tax impositions. So I think those kind of things will need to check with the local tax in each placement. There are also sometimes some state or regional tax. We don't know. This needs to be assessed by the company, of course, to make sure that this is compliance with the local law, because this is all fall under the requirement to comply with the local regulations. Hopefully that answered the question on tax. The last one is about, this is very interesting. There's a questions from institutions that is in the cooperation for with university for vaccine development. So I think there has been several questions in the past whether health and education sector, because it's not included in the priority sector of the MOU, but are there any opportunities to join this SDE? Because I mean, I think there's many education institution between Indonesia, Australia, and also health institution that is in cooperation. I know that Catalyst also work on some projects which connecting these two sectors. So Bu Ratih, maybe until I think we're waiting for, oh, Dan is already online. Hello, Dan? Can you hear the voice from the event? Okay, maybe waiting a bit for the technical, the sound is not on yet. But Bu Ratih, is there any opportunity, Bu, for health and education sector?
I don't think so. Maybe both government considered and discussed on this matter.
Yeah, I think the MOU itself says that other sector will be considered. So it doesn't say like definitely cannot, the MOU itself opening to other sector, but it needs to be mutual demand. I mean, Indonesia institution, Australia institution in cooperation. And that demonstration, I think this is a good input for the government to consider the improvement of the pilot SDE. Next, I think then is the sound on again or still off? The organizer, is it on? No? Okay. Okay, I will read the online session first, then while you can just collect all the inquiries, and we will get back to you again once the technical is resolved.
Eager on that to see if he might.
Okay, so let's go to the, I think there's a questions on state-owned enterprise in the online session. If I may, I will just read because the online audience is here to give the direct questions, or I can read the question. So the question will be, okay. So first, there are a couple of questions. Language requirements for Indonesian skilled workers. What is the English language requirement to participate, and do Indonesian workers need to sit general training IELTS? So for language requirements, this has been discussed in the past. So there is no specific like IELTS level 7, 8 that is stated or stipulated in the MOU. However, it clearly says that the language that is language possession needs to be enough or sufficient for the work and placement that is conducted by the participant. So there are job position maybe that doesn't require quite a high language requirement, but there are also, let's say like in the medical profession or CPA, I think the language requirement is quite high. So those are the things that the assessment is actually more to the receiving organizations, because the focus is to get this participant to be trained, to improve, to get a sort of experience. But if the language is a barrier, then this is something that the receiving organization needs to really assess this in the first place. So whether or not there is a specific language requirements, that is basically depends on the organization. And also, I think, again, we go back to ANSCO. If there is several requirements that is already put there in ANSCO, then definitely the participants needs to fulfill that. Next question from the online is, there will be 4 parties involved. How about employee working under other ministries, such as Ministry of State-Owned Enterprise with its state-owned company? So maybe like this is not between branch company, but maybe related with state-owned enterprise. Bu Rati, is SOE included in this scheme? Yeah, BUMN. Because the institution's cooperation is between branch companies, right? And also joint venture, partnership. Now, how about state-owned enterprise, let's say here in Jakarta, and then maybe the SOA is opening a branch in Australia. We've seen, I mean, we've heard this before. Will this be qualified for the SDE? For UKPS?
Kalau untuk UKPS pada dasarnya bisa, tapi kita harus melihat lagi persyaratan yang dicantumkan dalam MOU tersebut. Karena dalam MOU tersebut perusahaan-perusahaan yang dapat mengimplementasi SDE pilot ini adalah perusahaan-perusahaan yang mana mereka itu di bawah Kadin ya. SOE tidak di bawah Kadin ya.
Yeah, I think this is a note, but it's not prohibited ya Mbak ya, to apply for UKPS actually, karena BUMN ada UKPS-nya juga.
Tapi kita harus menyesuaikan dengan syarat di MOU.
Okay, so I think this is the question will be, of course, whether the BUMN, the SOA, is fulfilling the requirements in the MOU first. It is not restricted, but BUMN, yes. But of course the question, because in DFAT process, the Australian host company is the one that will apply for DFAT application. So the question, if the SOA is opening the branch in Australia, whether they can also send their application I think this will be further discussed offline, Bu, but this is a very good input, because we know for sure in mining sector there has been a sort of a SOA that already extending their business to Australia. Maybe Pak George also familiar, but I think this is one of the input for the scheme. So I think that's the question from online. Is there any other question from online that hasn't been addressed? Okay. And I heard that Dan, your audio is on again, is it?
Yes, can you hear me now?
Okay. So I will, if you, do you follow through the
session while the technical issues is being resolved. Maybe you want to add some more on the inquiries.
I think I'm happy to leave the responses as already provided. I'm just trying to think. Yeah, for example, the question about the students, I think it is important to note that the MOU does talk about people being employed, that it is about workplace placements. So that might create eligibility issues for someone who is a full-time student and not employed. The question about taxation, the MOU is silent on taxation. That would mean that the statutory and bilateral arrangements that are already in place would otherwise apply. The MOU doesn't purport to change anything like, in that space at all. And I think there was other questions about, I think there was a question about SOEs, their eligibility. Again, happy to talk to colleagues in the Indonesian government about how we look at that, those specific cases. And the healthcare sector one, again, the MOU does make provision for other sectors not specified to be considered. But of course, that is in consultation between Australia and Indonesia and industry stakeholders. So that we need to have discussions bilaterally and domestically about including other sectors that aren't already identified. I probably missed the other questions, but yeah, hopefully that helps. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Jen. So I think there are some hands that is raised here on the floor that is not being addressed. So we will give the last session to the floor. Organizer, can you please hand the mic to over there? Okay.
Thank you, morning everyone. I'm Lia Farisiana from Indonesian Migrant Worker Protection Board or Badan Pelindungan Pekerja Migran Indonesia BP2MI. Allow me to speak in bahasa. Izin menyampaikan dua hal. Yang pertama, terima kasih Pak George, tadi sudah disampaikan secara umum oleh Pak George terkait dengan sertifikat skill ini. Artinya kami juga sudah beberapa kali cerita sedikit bahwa kami juga sudah beberapa kali mengupayakan untuk dapat menempatkan pekerja migran kita yang terampil profesional di Australia. Cuma memang ada beberapa kendala yang salah satunya adalah sertifikasi keterampilan memang. Nah, kami berharap memang ada pengakuan antar dua negara. Mungkin dengan melalui pintu ini kita berharap ini bisa menjadi salah satu jalan keluar untuk menyelesaikan penempatan pekerja migran kita terampil profesional ke Australia. Jadi kami berharap mungkin nantinya pekerja-pekerja kita yang telah mendapatkan sertifikat, kalau tadi dijelaskan masih dalam proses perumusan, mudah-mudahan kalaupun nanti pekerja itu sudah tidak lagi melalui penempatan tidak melalui program ini, dia tetap bisa memakai sertifikat ini dan diakui oleh kedua negara, terutama khususnya di negara Australia. Yang kedua, sebagaimana tadi disampaikan oleh Pak Wira, BP2MI adalah lembaga pemerintah non-kementerian yang tugas pokok dan fungsinya adalah melaksanakan kebijakan yang ditetapkan oleh Kementerian Ketenagakerjaan. Dalam hal ini untuk pencatatan tadi yang disampaikan Pak Wira, dalam sistem kami, Sisko P2MI, itu selain pencatatan, kita juga akan memberikan Pre-Departure Orientation atau PDO, atau OPP, orientasi pra-pemberangkatan. Nah, mungkin dalam kesempatan ini, karena ini program khusus ya untuk SDIP ini, kami mohon bantuan untuk bisa sama-sama membuat modul terkait dengan pelaksanaan pre-departure orientation ini. Kalaupun mungkin nanti tidak bisa kita lakukan bersama-sama, mungkin dengan Kementerian Ketenagakerjaan dan dari pihak Australia dalam hal ini mungkin bisa dibantu melalui katalis. Dapatkah kami mendapatkan informasi-informasi untuk kami menyusun modul itu. Jadi secara umum ada dua hal yang perlu kita sampaikan dalam PDO itu, dalam kegiatan PDO. Yang pertama terkait dengan hak dan kewajiban dan kondisi kerja, itu biasanya tercantum di employment contract. Kalau bisa kami dapat sampel employment contract or anything like that lah ya. Kemudian yang kedua terkait dengan peraturan perundang-undangan di Australia. Mungkin karena ini program khusus bisa diinformasikan kepada kami secara detail sehingga kita bisa menyampaikan pada kegiatan pre-departure orientation. Mungkin itu saja dalam kesempatan ini. Terima kasih sudah mengundang kami dan melibatkan kami dalam program ini. Terima kasih. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Ya, terima kasih. One more question, Pak.
Yeah.
Silakan.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. My name is Michael from Binus University International. We do have the partnership with Australian University. We do have the regular procedure for mobility. So how the student can take double degree programs and also internships. But in here, we are focusing also the possibility to have opportunity through SDE pilot program here, especially collaboration between university and industry in Australia. So the first worker could be students. Our students have professional certifications, yeah, and also they need to do internships for 2 semesters, and normally they need to do full employment in industry already. So maybe this is also, there is a possibility in SDE programs. But for the second worker could be the faculty members. They will conduct the research and teaching. The possibility could be in Australian University or in another way around. The professor from Australia can come to here to teach or to collaborate in research as well. So we would like to know the possibility through SDE program here. If I understand UNSCO level 1 and 3, this is only applicable for deaned, level deaned. So what is possible for faculty member as well? Yes, thank you. That's the questions.
Okay, thank you for the question. For the first one is for the Bina P2 PMI feedback from Manpower Ministry. Do you want to give comments to the idea of the pre-departure orientation and how to give more education, maybe like insights to the worker that will be sent to Australia under this program? Thank you.
Thank you. About the pre-departure orientation, for the information, this is the obligation for the Indonesian migrant worker who work abroad to follow the pre-departure orientation. And I think for the SGA program, it needs different module than the other placement scheme. We also think this is need another program. This is another module for the benefit for the candidate of worker and also for the company in Australia and in Indonesia. So we need make another module for the pre-departure orientation for this SDA program. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I think there will also be not just the compliance part, but also the cultural part for the pre-departure orientation is also as important as the legal side, because I think we received some input that the cultural between the two countries. I mean, the working culture and also the living culture. That's also as important as the compliance to basically guarantee the successful training of the participants. The second questions from Binus on education, whether full employment student can be considered into this program, and also about academic or faculty for research and related to ANSCO, how they can fulfill this. Dan Simpson, are you still online?
Yes, yes, I am. Just a clarification. So ANSCO skill levels 1, 2, and 3 would accommodate people easily with university degrees. So if the question is whether an individual in the academic sector, presumably holding at least a degree, possibly further study, would be qualified, the answer would be yes. It comes down to the occupation that they're going into in Australia. The question is that occupation ANSCO skill level 1, 2, or 3? The other question about, again, I think this might be a question again about whether a student can participate in the program, for example, to go into an Australian university and conduct research, that sort of thing. Again, we'd need to look more closely at the situation, whether or not that the individual is on, say, sabbatical or is being funded by grant. Are they technically employed by the sending organisation? What is the nature of the workplace placement in Australia or vice versa into Indonesia? I think we'd need to look more closely at the details of that and collaborate with Kamanaka as required to understand if the situation works for the MOU, for the terms of the MOU. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Then hope it satisfied the inquiries. However, Pak, if not, there will be. We can continue with the offline. I mean, after events, can exchange contact, and we can also. I think Atalis can also bridging with the related institution if you have any additional questions or follow-ups. So I think I will ask the organizer is. Okay, so I think the time is up. Unfortunately, it's very fruitful discussion right now that we have, and it's very helpful for government and also for Catalyst to improve the not just the socialization, but there are of course a lot of things that can be considered to be included, ya Mbak ya, in the system and in the consideration for the execution of the program. We really thank you for all of the questions and inquiries from the audience. There's not, unfortunately, not enough time to address everything, but hopefully it answers some parts of the questions on how to join this program. And I think right now I will give the floor back to the MC.
Thank you, Mbak Betty and the panelists for the fruitful discussions. Before closing today's event, I would like to invite all the panelists and also Dan Simpson from Australia to take a picture together. Oh, yeah, everyone can stand and we will take a picture together. Yeah, I think everyone need to move in front of the big screen. Thank you, representative from Ministry of Manpower, Dan Simpson, and also Mbak Feti. Thank you, everyone, for making the time today to attend this event. A big thank to our partners, IABC and AIBC. The guidebook is also available in print and on Catalyst website. You could also send us an email to info@ia-cepa-catalyst.org if you have any further questions or inquiries for us. And earlier, Ibu Jennifer made a plug for the AIBC conference in Sydney in November. Allow me to make a plug for another event that is coming in May, an online webinar on investing in healthcare, which will take place on Tuesday, 14 May. And you may register to the event through our website at ia-cepa-catalyst.org. Okay, so I think that's all for today. Have a great day, everyone.